from the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast.
Coming up today on Ag Day, USDA thinks U.S. farmers will see their highest national corn yield ever recorded. The curveball sending crop prices in the red. With pressured prices, it's a grim reality for some.
And there are still some producers struggling in terms of maintaining a positive profit margins.
But the KC Fed says there is a glimmer of hope. In agribusiness, USDA didn't adjust soybean yield, but can soybean exports pick up?
But I think you're going to see very strong export sales.
Plus, from the front line to the farmland, meet a vet who wants to be a vet.
Ag Day, presented by the Chevy Silverado. High-strength steel for high-strength dependability.
Good morning, I'm Tyne Morgan. Clinton Griffiths is on assignment. Lackluster corn prices did not get any help from USDA's latest yield and production estimates. USDA boosted corn production by 2% from last month's estimate based on a large increase in yield. Production hits 14.6 billion bushels. That number is above the pre-report estimates. But the Ag Department pegs corn yield at a record 175.4 bushels an acre. That's more than 3 bushels higher than October. The soybean forecast was trimmed slightly, down about 1% from October, and now comes in at 4.4 billion bushels. Yield was unchanged from last month, still hitting 49.5 bushels an acre. With a record-sized corn crop in the making, how will this play out in the industry? Pro Farmer newsletter editor Brian Grady gives us his perspective. Well, with a much higher corn production estimate, USDA also boosted domestic corn ending stocks for 2017 to 2018. It comes in at just under 2.5 billion bushels. U.S. soybean ending stocks for this marketing year was trimmed a bit, now setting at 425 million bushels. Agricultural economist Chris Hurt from Purdue University weighs in on the report and where the market might be headed.
USDA also suggested with that much more corn, we're going to have usage that would increase for exports by 75 million bushels and for livestock feeding by 75 million bushels. Now what that means, 300 million more bushels of corn and 150 million more usage means the carryout is going to increase by 150 million bushels according to USDA. Now one of the other hallmarks is that this pushes the carryout up very close to 2.5 billion bushels on corn. And certainly a number of that magnitude really begins to limit upside rally potential simply because we have so much old crop stock, so much inventory that we're going to carry on into the 2018 crop at the end of the summer of 2018.
Well, crop prices didn't get any help from USDA on Thursday, but the Kansas City Fed says when looking at farm income, higher yields and better livestock prices are helping slow the decline. The Kansas City Federal Reserve's latest ag credit survey showed 82% of bankers reported a year-over-year decline in crop producers' working capital. Now, the drop wasn't as severe as 2016, but was higher than those bankers witnessed in 2014 and 2015. Now, at the same time, the survey did show a glimmer of hope. The Kansas City Fed found while farm income continued to decline in the third quarter, it was at a slower rate. 52% of bankers reported farm income falling from last year, but the Fed says that's the lowest share in 2 years. Omaha branch executive Nathan Kaufman authors the survey results, and he says they are watching what happens heading into 2018.
Profit margins are still pretty weak, and there are still some producers struggling in terms of maintaining a positive profit margin. So as we go into 2018, I think the focus will again be on what is the cash flow picture and how are people financing their operations for the next year.
The Kansas City Fed covers a wide geography from Colorado, Kansas, Nebraska, Oklahoma, also Wyoming, western Missouri, and northern New Mexico. Kaufman says areas that are heavily reliant upon cattle are faring better than others. The Chicago Fed office also releasing its quarterly survey. Farmland values for good, productive farmland in the 5-state district did not change from a year ago. They were also unchanged from the second quarter of the year. Of the 200 ag bankers who were surveyed, a vast majority expect land values to remain stable over the next 3 months. But a quarter of the banks expect a decrease, and 2% actually expect farmland values to go up. Well, corn harvest has been a slow one this year, with farmers still 13 points behind average. But with headway this week, harvest is coming to an end for some. Mike Hoffman has details and crop comments. Good morning, Mike.
Thanks, Tyne. As you mentioned, corn harvest is behind, but Mike Cunningham in East Central Illinois says he was finally able to wrap up this week. Mike says he finally found the rows he was looking for, the last ones for this year, which means harvest 2017 is in the books. USDA says statewide 83% of the corn is harvested, 8 points behind average. And harvest also wrapping up for Selden, Kansas farmer Michael Meyer. He says the best part is he doesn't have to eat lunch meat for another 5 months. I know many of you can relate. USDA says Kansas farmers are 5 points behind the average harvest pace for corn. And taking a look at the drought monitor, you can see it's actually getting worse in Arkansas and some of the surrounding areas. We'll take a closer look at that and have your forecast coming up. But first, here are some hometown temps.
Farm Journal On Air is the go-to app for American agriculture. AgDay, AgriTalk, U.S. Farm Report, and more. 24/7 access to all of your favorite shows, TV and radio. In your hands, on demand. Farm Journal On Air. Download the app today.
Still to come, we head to the floor of the CME to see how the trade is digesting the bigger yield numbers from the USDA. Plus, USDA didn't touch the national soybean yield, but do soybean shipments still need to pick up? And you may still be deep in harvest, but Farm Journal College talks planting and multi-hybrid technology, plus saluting America's patriots.
I'm Charles Denny. This coming Veterans Day, we'll meet a student here at the University of Tennessee Institute of Agriculture who served our country. And you may be surprised to hear how many veterans are on college campuses. That story coming up on AgDay.
Unlock the power of ag technology this December in Indianapolis at the first ever AgTech Expo. Learn all about it at farmjournalagtech.com.
In agribusiness, USDA throwing a curveball at the trade, and as a result, crop prices seen more red. Let's head now to the floor of the CME.
The estimate for corn comes in at about 175.4, well above the high end of expectations. This has brought us down below contract lows, so this is going to be something to keep a very close eye on going forward. If the market cannot break below on this very bearish news, there might be some short covering warranted here in the near term. The bulls want to see it close back above 351.25. Now, as far as the soybeans are concerned, we're looking for a little bit of value down here as well, breaking below trend line support. But I think you're really going to want to sit tight and wait for 980, where we have the 50% retracement from the June lows to the July highs, as well as the 50, 100, and 200-day moving average. As far as the wheat's concerned, relatively mute, all things considered on the day. We're still looking for a little bit higher price action to sell against. 438 is the level we're looking at. That's the 50-day moving average, an indicator we have not closed above since July. So that's what we're looking at to round out the week. That's what you should be looking at too. It's been Oliver Slope with Blue Line Futures from the floor of the CME.
Here now with Alan Brugler. Alan, when we look at this soybean market, we've seen some impressive yields out there, but it seems like these yields are kind of tapering off as we get later into the season. Overall, where do you see soybean prices short term?
Well, soybeans have been in an uptrend since the 1st of September. May it continue a little longer. I think the key is probably the export market. We've had about a month lag in the exports, where we were expecting to get a little more volume in September, October than what we had. That's because Brazil had such a big crop last year. But I think you're going to see very strong export sales, Nov-Dis Jan now.
Okay.
And I think that's going to give us a much firmer basis for one thing, and also underpin the price a little bit. over the winter. So it's basically a 1 month lag from what we would normally see on the export program.
So the sales pace does not worry you at this point?
I think it's already picking up, and Brazilian exports for October dropped to only 2.5 million tons or so. So that means the U.S. has got to get more on the boats now.
Thank you so much, Alan. We appreciate it. Stay with us. We'll take a break, and then we'll be back with more Ag Day.
To talk to Alan about his ag market professional services, call Brugler Marketing and Management at 402-697-3623 or visit his website, www.bruglermarketing.com.
Receive a free trial of the Daily Grain Plan newsletter from Roach Ag Marketing. Text Roach to 31313. Start your subscription today by texting Roach to 31313.
Ag Day weather, brought to you by Kawasaki and the new Mule Pro FXR side-by-side. Ride like a boss with high-end styling and rugged capability.
All right, welcome back to Ag Day. Time now to check in with meteorologist Mike Hoffman. Mike, when I look at that drought monitor map, I mean, the Northeast has improved so much in the past couple
storm.
Yeah, really.
Basically.
But in the past couple weeks. But when you look at other areas of the map, the dry weather is just intensifying.
I know, especially around Arkansas. We've seen that for about the past 4 or 5 weeks now, getting a little bit worse each week. In fact, you can see severe drought is now showing up in areas like Texarkana up to Little Rock and to the southern portions of Missouri in some of that area. Now, farther north where it was starting to get worse earlier in the season, it has gotten better. From South Dakota into Montana, parts of North Dakota, still severe to extreme drought in much of that area. But it has improved over the past 3 or 4 months, but it hasn't been improving much over the past month or so. Let's go back 1 month and you can see how dry it was, at least in pockets. The northern Mississippi Valley, it was starting to get dry in Arkansas. It was starting to get dry in the Northeast. As we head through the past 4 weeks, you'll notice how it continues to get a little bit worse through Arkansas. It started to get worse in the Northeast, and then all of a sudden it just went away after that big storm that came through a couple of weeks ago. Let's take a look at the map then as we start today. We have a storm to the north of Maine with some pretty good snows up that way. Everything's kind of offshore in the east now, so cold domes of high pressure continue to move eastward. We have a weak system moving north of the Canadian border, north of Montana, and a weakening system coming into the Pacific Northwest. As you can see, Northern California into Oregon getting some rain as we head through the day. Most of the lower 48 not getting a whole lot. There will be some scattered showers in parts of South Florida and a little bit of lake effect snow parts of the Great Lakes. As we head through tonight then, we'll see some more snow develop ahead of that warm front into the western Great Lakes. This system weakening as it comes across the Rockies, but a little bit of mountain snow. Another system lurking offshore though of the west coast. So as we head through the day tomorrow, by late in the day, we'll start to see some rain coming back into western Washington. Little bit of rain and snow right there in the northern portions of the Mississippi Valley. A little bit of snow then to the northeast of that warm front. Here's a precipitation estimate over the past 24 hours. We've seen some amounts in the southeast, the northeast, and the northwest. Adding in the next 36 hours, you can see we don't add a lot anywhere, but we are going to add a little bit through the Great Lakes and a little bit more there, Northern California into western Oregon. Snowfall then, you can see over the next 36 hours, we're going to see a little bit moving once again into the Great Lakes area. There will be some more in the northern Rockies as well. Highs today very cold, 20s and 30s from the Ohio Valley northward. Cool all the way to the Gulf Coast. In fact, lows tonight dropping into the 30s in many parts of the northern portions of Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia. Another chilly one tomorrow in the Great Lakes and still on the cool side down to the Gulf. All because of the jet stream. That trough, though, is moving away. So we will see as we head into next week a little bit of a warm up, but there's still troughs coming from west to east, and that'll cause some pretty active weather across the country right through next week. That's a look across the country. Now let's take a look at some local forecasts. We head to Helena, Montana. First of all, mostly cloudy, a bit of rain or snow possible, high of 41. Texarkana, Texas, lots of sunshine and cool with a high of 63. And finally, Clarksburg, West Virginia, a mix of sun and clouds, high of just 35.
Will you be planting multi-hybrid seed next spring? Next, we'll talk about the technology with Farm Journal agronomist Ken Ferry and meet a college student who wants to become a veterinarian and see how life lessons he learned on the battlefield may help.
Ag Day, brought to you by the Enlist Weed Control System. More weed control, less drift and volatility, maximum yield potential. Farm Journal College TV is brought to you by Instinct and N-Serve. Maximize every nitrogen application so your crops deliver the max in return. Learn more at maxinmaxout.com.
Well, some of you may still be deep into harvest, but at Farm Journal College, we're talking about planting.
Ken, let's talk a little bit first about multi-hybrid technology, whether it's planters or using the technology in cab. It's going to change the seed industry a little bit in order to make it successful. So what should a farmer do or change when it comes to purchasing seed if they're going to be using or adopting the technology?
He has to know his management zones and decide what he's after. In most cases, when we're changing population, we're changing it for water management. Where we got water, we want to push it harder. Where we want to protect it. And in those areas now that we can change not only population but hybrid on the go, we're going to start thinking about changing hybrid characteristics. So for instance, on those light soils, we want to be very pendulum or horizontal in our leaf structure because we're going to lower the population, but we still want to capture all the sunlight. When we lower the population, we want to flex the ear. When we move down into those heavier soils that we want to push the population, take advantage of our water supply, we have to bring the leaf structure up so we get sunlight deeper in the plant. We're going to push the population up, so we need to have a more determinate ear that won't be affected as far as pushing it too high. So the farmer's challenge is to learn those hybrid characteristics from the field plots and stuff that he does so he knows his hybrids apart. He's going to have to build a yearbook of his hybrids so he knows just what he's looking at when he's looking for a hybrid.
Still to come, a vet who wants to become a vet in the country is next.
In the Country, sponsored by Kubota. Tractors, hay tools, utility vehicles, mowers, and more. Visit Kubota.com today.
Well, today is the Marine Corps' birthday, marking 242 years of serving this country. And tomorrow is Veterans Day. If you haven't already, think a veteran. One place you might find a surprising number of veterans is on a college campus. Charles Denny introduces us to a veteran at the UT Institute of Agriculture with more on his brave past and promising future.
An early morning on the farm, and Brent Benet gains experience for his future. Brent is an animal science major at UT's College of Agricultural Sciences and Natural Resources, and he's considering veterinary medicine. Part of his training includes this lab at UT's Little River Ag Research Unit, where he learns about the artificial insemination of dairy cattle.
So if I were to ever become a veterinarian, I'd like to run a mixed practice, do large and small, maybe farm calls. Currently, I'm in an advanced reproductive physiology class, and I love it. So maybe repros in my future, I'm not sure.
For Benet, it will be a second career. The would-be veterinarian is a veteran. He served nearly a decade in the Marines and Army, stationed at Fort Campbell a while, with deployments to Iraq and the very dangerous Kandahar province of Afghanistan.
What would happen is that the Taliban would try to skirt around this specific part of the country and run guns and drugs and try to get around us. So we kind of ran a blockade so they couldn't get around us.
The University of Tennessee has more than 500 military veterans, and 63 of them are here on the UT Ag campus. They're studying everything from veterinary medicine to plant and food science, and forestry, wildlife, and fisheries is a popular major among vets.
I think for veterans, many of them are motivated by the fact that they want to give back. You know, they've given much of their life to safeguarding our freedom, and they want to give back to careers that are going to have a future, like feeding the world and safeguarding the environment, and agriculture is always going to be needed.
Benet says the transition to civilian life wasn't easy, but the military prepared him well for college. The academics here are challenging, especially in animal science, but what students go through doesn't really compare to a combat zone.
I also see where they're coming from because I am now a student and I get stressed out about these papers and this test here and this test there. I just know how to manage my stress a lot better than they do because, well, this test isn't going to kill me.
And that is what you call perspective. For Brent Benet, every day is Veterans and Memorial Day. Some of his tattoos are in memory of friends who did not come home from their military service. Now he looks ahead to a future where he's finding a new way to serve.
This is Charles Denny reporting.
Thank you, Charles. UT leaders say they've seen an increase in veteran students because of the Forever GI Bill, allowing veterans to attend college at any time. In the past, the GI Bill had a time limit. Well, that's all the time we have this morning. We're glad you tuned in. For all of us at AgDay and the Farm Journal team, we thank you, America's veterans.
AgDay, brought to you by Ram Commercial, America's longest lasting heavy-duty pickups.